Welcome to Brainstoryum. I'm Anna Tizard, award-winning dreampunk and deeply weird fantasy author, and yes, that's me and my fiction that's deeply weird. Explore and imagine with me the most unexpected story ideas using the surrealist word game of Exquisite Corpse. Find out more and join in at annatizard.com. This is a storytelling challenge unlike anything you've tried before. Hello, imaginative people. I'm Anna Tizard, and this is episode 79 of Brainstoryum. Well, I hope you've had an excellent Easter by the time you listen to this. I'm recording this just before Easter, which, let's face it, is a difficult time for chocoholics. Every time I've been into our local supermarket in the last 2 months, maybe even more, just to buy ordinary groceries, I have been faced with walls of tantalising boxes containing that unspeakably amazing stuff wrapped in glistening purple foil. I usually take my husband with me, not just to do the heavy carrying, but to help me through this difficult time. And when the egg I really wanted was selling out, so I couldn't exactly leave buying it to the absolute last minute, I really like chocolate buttons. I bought it the weekend before Easter and I asked Duncan to hide it, but he wasn't quick enough, so I caved and ate the buttons that came with the egg. It was only a small packet, and the way I see it, it's the egg part that's for Easter, right? So that's okay, isn't it? But I digress. Moving swiftly on, I have to tell you about some changes I'm making to the show. Nothing massive, but I would love your feedback anyway. Now, over time, I've got into the habit of feeling compelled to write a short story or scene based on pretty much every single Exquisite Corpse that comes up. This is quite an intense challenge. I think I've just been like, I've got to prove that it can be done, even with the really crazy ones. And if you're a regular listener, you'll know that I love surprises in fiction. I love to be surprised, and I love to write in surprises to my stories. And this is a great way to find those surprises, to go looking under every rock or every exquisite corpse. So that might be why I got a little bit obsessive over this, trying to write every story. And it's also why the show's become just that little bit longer than I'd like in general, and I haven't been able to bring it down closer to half an hour, which is what I'd really like. And while this has been going on, I've found myself drafting some scenes and creating characters which I know almost straight away that I'm not going to develop further, and they're not going to end up in my next collection. That's what's made me do a double take. And while challenging yourself with writing exercises and writing prompts is fantastic for developing your writing, and I never say anything is a waste of time. Nothing is ever wasted because you're growing and improving all the time, especially if you challenge yourself with unusual prompts. I just think that with my goals at the moment, I need a sharper focus on the stories that have greater potential to make it into my next book, to be a bit more selective on what I actually settle down to draft. As authors, it's good every now and then to assess what direction you're going in, how well you are using your writing time. Is it the most efficient way to reach your goals? And when I asked myself that recently, I thought, probably not quite. So what I'm going to try and do from now on, for now, this is an evolving show as ever, is I'm going to brainstorm stories from 3 exquisite corpses in turn, as usual, and then pick one to draft a scene or story from and share that with you, having made excellent use of the pause button as ever. Maybe this will give me more time to reflect on how I wrote that piece, why, what it was that caught my interest. Maybe, as I pull the words out for each exquisite corpse, I'll have a bit more time to explore the meanings of different words that come up. And I do like the odd bit of fact-checking, with an emphasis on odd facts. These are great story fodder too. So while it's a fairly subtle change to what goes on in Brainstoryum, I'm hoping it will keep on keeping on with all the laughs, writing tips, intrigue, discussions on writing process, and of course, the bizarre and mind-bending prompts provided by Exquisite Corpse and your word suggestions. Do let me know what you think of the new format, or if there are things that you'd like to hear more about or less about on the show. Please just get in touch with me at annatizard.com and hit the contact button at the bottom of the page, because this show is for you. But before we get on to the new brainstorms, I have some ideas sent in by my talented listeners based on a word combination that came up in the last show, the plush poltergeist. Nick Vrekar said, Bethany had vanished in an instant, undoubtedly summoned by someone else. All Claire had to remember her by was the stuffed, smiling polter plushie Bethany had won at the carnival. She didn't know how she'd find a summoned succubus, but she knew she had to try. Curious how many of these prompts can be so apt for a carnival setting. This would never have occurred to me but for your interpretation. Thank you, Nick. I am intrigued by this story. Ashley Anglin said, in life, she was the gorgeously plus-sized fashion editor everyone feared. When she haunts you, you'll keep finding your closets rearranged. Pointed shopping suggestions will pop up in tabs you didn't open, and you'll wake to see your bin full of items she's deemed unsatisfactory. I love it. This is a completely different interpretation of the word plush, which has taken us into the world of fashion and fabrics. Haunted fashion and fabrics. I'd love to read something like this. Thank you for your idea, Ashley, and welcome to the show. And happy birthday to you, as it's Ashley's birthday as this show releases. Eric Montgomery took the plush poltergeist to, again, a very different space. He wrote, a hard-boiled teddy bear, cursed and stuffed with regret, solves crimes in a city of haunted toys. Polyester noir meets plush absurdity. Someone's gutting Beanie Babies, and Grizz Malone's the only fuzz with enough fluff to crack the case. And to crack me up as well. Thank you, Eric. You are hilarious. In fact, I've been listening to Eric's Prompted podcast, which is bursting with prompts, fiction, and story ideas. Eric releases a 20-minute show every Monday with writing prompts and his own responses to them. Poems, flash fiction, microfiction, and there's a prompt for you to try at the end of each show. He's even having a go at the plush poltergeist as announced in his episode 10. That is a slightly longer go than the one I've just read out. And that makes me feel slightly famous. So do check out the Prompted podcast if you are hungry for more stories and prompts at thepromptedpodcast.org. The show's on all the usual platforms and you can listen direct on the webpage too. You can also find out more about Eric and his writing at mrericmontgomery.com. Right, I think it's time to reach for new ideas and writing challenges from the socks of destiny. That's right, and for those who haven't listened before, or perhaps it's been a while, Exquisite Corpse mixes words and phrases into a whole sentence, which goes describing word noun, action, describing word noun. So it is with some trepidation and excitement that I reach into the first sock, the describing word sock. And our first word is from Wendy. Veiny. So someone or something with prominent veins. How could this work for our weird creatures theme? Next word is from Mariah. Bill. So is that someone called Bill or an actual bill? Next word, or actually this will be a phrase because it's from the action sock. This is again from Mariah. Travelled the world with. A veiny bill travelling the world. Curiouser and curiouser. Our next word is from Paul Thomas. Crumpled. It sounds like a piece of paper if it's crumpled, or I suppose it could be fabric, clothing, maybe. I mean, a person might, if you said a person was crumpled, it kind of makes them sound like they're a piece of paper, or they look like a piece of paper, which sounds completely ridiculous. But I always thought the detective Columbo looked crumpled. You know what I mean. Final word is from Alessandro Bozzo. Vestibule. Oh, that's just weird. So let me just read out the entire Exquisite Corpse. I promise you, if you're a new listener, there will be something intriguing here in the form of a story idea. The veiny bill travelled the world with the crumpled vestibule. Okay, so just going through some of the words. So as I say, veiny means someone or something with prominent veins. Bill usually means a demand for payment or a receipt. I tend to associate the bill with getting a bill in a restaurant, but there's also utility bills. But I think it can also mean a pamphlet or a flyer for a show, like a theatre show, a theatre bill. That's more interesting. If it's veiny, I'm not sure. Could that mean it's been folded a lot to create vein-like lines or crisscrossing creases running up it? Travelled the world with in someone's pocket? Wait, hang on a minute. This is weird that two crumpled or folded pieces of paper have shown up on either side of the same Exquisite Corpse. Because if the veiny bill can only really be a folded or screwed up receipt or pamphlet, and the only way I can think of to crumple a vestibule is to draw a picture of one or a print off. There's a print off of a plan of an entrance hall that's been folded up roughly. Then we're looking at two pieces of paper that have been folded or screwed up and perhaps have ended up in the same pocket together because they travel the world together. But in that case, we'd have to look outside of the Exquisite Corpse to find the character who put them in their pocket and their reasons for doing this and for travelling the world, because surely the story, the essence of a story must lie there. Out of the clues we have a screwed up bill and a crumpled image of a vestibule and the travelling around the world, I feel more intrigued by the crumpled vestibule because that's so unusual. So I'm going to think a bit more about that. Always follow the sparks of your imagination, I say. So a design of an entrance hall sketched on a piece of paper. What for? Does it need to be renovated, redecorated? Why is the entrance more important than the rest of the building? And an entrance to what? A castle? A hotel? A library? In which there's a portal to other places? Now there's an entrance hall. An entrance hall of entrances. Someone who travels the world with a picture of this in their pocket. There's a mystery here. What do they expect to do when they get to this hotel, which is actually a library of portals? I'm imagining an entrance hall as a sort of portal hub. It looks like a hotel, but when you go up to reception, instead of just picking up a key to a generic room, you choose from a catalogue of doors into other worlds, and you pay to go into that particular room, which is not actually a hotel room at all. It's a way through. Gosh, I do like that idea. So when I say that the veiny Bill travelled the world with the crumpled vestibule, the real question is, which world did the person choose when they got there and why? Perhaps there's the opening question for the beginning of a story writing session. Will this be the one I have a go at for drafting? I think another Exquisite Corpse first. Let's see. Okay, our first word is from, if I can detach it from my finger, Rebecca Glazner, luminescent. So something that's glowing. Next word is from Alessandro Bozzo. Oh my goodness. Barnacle. A luminescent barnacle. That is bizarre. Okay, let's see what action we have for this one. Oops, got two falling out here. This is from Paul Thomas. Oh, no. This is a very actiony action. Leapt through the I can't even say it. Leapt through the trap door to evade. Leaping barnacles? Well, are we going to take this literally? Not quite sure. Let's just see what comes next and then I'll have a think about the words a bit more. So this is from Anonymous. Flushed. So I would have thought someone whose cheeks are flushed. That's what jumps into my mind. But is it because they're angry or excited? And final word is from Sophie de Soles, coffee expert. Oh, no. Okay, this is ridiculous. The luminescent barnacle leapt through the trap door to evade the flushed coffee expert. Okay, I think it's time for a tea break. I think you feel it too. Do you feel it too? So I'm just going to stir my green tea, which is probably overbrewed by now, but there we go. Okay. Okay, so this is properly bonkers. Glowing barnacles, leaping through trapdoors. A coffee expert, presumably a barista, chasing it, waving a tennis racket after it. I don't know why I thought of a tennis racket. It's the only thing she has to hand behind the counter, thanks to her lunchtime tennis date. Because I feel like this should be in her environment if she's doing the chasing. So this is probably a cafe on a ship, a cruise ship. If a barnacle could leap, what other kind of trapdoor would be worth it jumping through than one that leads straight into the sea. Let's rewind a little bit and pick out some curious details, because if I can't imagine a viable story around this one, which is making me kind of thankful that I've changed the format, like right now, talk about timing, I still like interesting facts, and as writers you never know what unusual fact may turn out to be helpful in future. We have to absorb interesting facts from the world around us. I feel like I should know something about barnacles. I know almost nothing about barnacles. So I've pressed the pause button, and while you were blinking, I looked them up. Now, I've always thought of barnacles as just sort of weird-looking stone-like things that stick to rocks, and sometimes the backs of whales, or the ruins of a ship sunk long ago, rusting like a metal skeleton in the deeps. Barnacles are crustaceans related to shrimps, so there is a little creature hidden inside. That may be obvious to you, but I forget this sometimes because they just look like funny little rocks. And when you see barnacles on a rock on the shore, they've snapped shut tightly to keep the moisture inside as they wait for the tide to come in. When they're covered by water again, they open up, and out come these very fine, long, thin fingers that wave and sort of claw delicately at the water. Are they beckoning or threatening something? No, this is just the way they absorb oxygen from the water. But I do love the extreme weirdness of creatures under the sea. They're like aliens, except they're right here. Bioluminescence is another super weird thing you get underwater. You don't get that from barnacles, although this exquisite corpse suggests that the luminescent barnacle leapt through the trapdoor to evade the flushed coffee expert. And now, perhaps because the images have had time to settle in my brain, I'm beginning to see a sort of Star Wars bar of strange creatures gathering in a coffee house in a cruise ship just for sea monsters. They drink a special kind of so-called coffee that enables them to stay on board in the air for a little while. A stingray grins over its cup. 2 dolphins clink their mugs. And a barnacle, thoroughly attached to its bar stool, waves its frond-like fingers to the barista in a way that seems kind of rude. Is one of those fingers sticking up higher than the others? The middle one? It's no wonder the barista lost it, picked up her tennis racket and chased the thing off the ship. And maybe that was why the luminescent barnacle leapt through the trapdoor to evade the flushed coffee expert. Could I write this? Could you write this? Is it in fact just another episode of SpongeBob SquarePants? Perhaps I'll leave that for you to answer. It is time for a third and final exquisite corpse before I make my choice of story writing challenge. I'm starting to really like this, this choice-based show. Okay, our first word is from Sophie de Soles. Long-legged. This is a rather physical thing. I'm feeling a potential creature coming our way with the long legs. But what could it be? Our noun is from Wendy. Train. A long-legged train? This is, I'm just going to reserve judgment until we've got some more words to play with. The action is from Mariah. Fear-mongered about. Well, this is an unusual train that walks on long legs and fear-mongers about things. So perhaps gossips and tells stories about people trying to make out that they're scary. I think it's Pretty scary if you ask me. Next word is from me. Yes, I do sometimes remember to put words into the socks. Shadowy. Okay. Final word. Who or what was shadowy? This is from Paul Thomas. Victim. Ooh, that's intriguingly slightly vague. So, altogether we have the long-legged train fearmongered about the shadowy victim. I feel like there's a mystery around this. A shadowy victim? What could that mean? And a long-legged train? That's making me think of a gorgeous book I've read and reread called The House with Chicken Legs by Sophie Anderson. It's about a little girl who lives with her grandmother in a house that literally stands up and runs on giant chicken legs before sitting back down again in its new place of choosing. It's actually about the myth of Baba Yaga, who welcomes the dead into the world beyond. She lives in this bizarre house with her granddaughter, who is the next reluctant Yaga to be, and that's why they move around so much, to call in the dead who leave this world through a portal in the fireplace, I seem to remember. It is middle grade children's fiction, but it's beautifully written. It's bonkers enough for me, eerie and painfully sweet, sort of bittersweet, and I highly recommend it. Sometimes it's worth reading children's fiction for that injection of vivid imagination and no faffing about when it comes to plotting and pacing and getting on with the action. Anyway, in this instance, we have not a long-legged house, but a long-legged train, which is probably even weirder if you think about it, because a train is a mode of transport. It doesn't need another way of getting around. It certainly doesn't need legs. But are we taking this literally, though? What other meanings are there for train? Well, as a noun, a train can be an additional trail of fabric at the back of a wedding dress or other formal robes, I guess. If you said that that train was long-legged, I would be scared and disturbed. I mean, legs poking out the back of a long dress? That's too surreal even for me. A train can also be a group of people who are sort of formal, attendants of someone important, presumably, at an event. Kind of like assistants who are just there to accompany this special guest. You might say this kind of train is many-legged if there are lots of attendants, but long-legged? Unless they're all models or something, and there's a reason why they're meant to be tall. A train of attendants to a giant who requires tall human assistants who can reach her hair and her face if her makeup needs touching up. Humans who make her look a little bit less out of place, being themselves unusually tall for their species. She applied for them through a model agency who worked hard to find people who were more than 7 feet tall. Going back, I realise this is getting very strange, but that's just the way it is. Going back to the Exquisite Corpse, we have the long-legged train fearmongered about the shadowy victim. Who is this shadowy victim? I think this is the one I dip into and have a go at drafting. Pause button, here I come. The camera flashes winked off her necklace like stars. Her ruby red dress poured from her curves onto the steps, as if dripping, to merge with the red carpet. Unblinking, her dark almond eyes challenged the photographers, with a glare that was both dangerous and beautiful. The giantess, Lady Murtar, ambassador for the land of the giants, and here as an honorary guest to the museum's grand opening, stood as tall as an oak sapling. Her human entourage, hand-picked for their modelling experience and unusually long legs, had ushered her to this position next to a column. Now that she was here, one hand on her hip, the other splayed on the column, she understood their thinking. The column was wider than her, and taller, just. A quirk of her scarlet lips hinted that she could push it over with just a nudge. After a flurry of tucks, strokes and dabs with a makeup brush, her train of attendees hung back away from the flashes to let the journalists capture her glory. But as they held back, rather close to the journalists who craned around them, the train exchanged murmurs that were a little too loud for the crowd's comfort. Well, it's terrible what they're saying. Never gave her a chance. At least they're still letting her come to this. I should hope so. Yes, but is it just morbid curiosity? I'm waiting for them to ask the question. She's no murderer, that's for sure. Sadly not. That hideous creature is still at large. What? You mean it didn't die? It can never die. But she's given it a warning, all right. They should be grateful. The tourist of the entourage threw a sneer over his thin, square shoulder at the crowd. She's the only one who can save the museum now. I just hope they realise that. One of the journalists lowered her iPad for a moment, a frown creasing her forehead. What would be the stance of the newspapers in the morning? Was Lady Murtar a friend of the human world or a monster? 2 hours earlier, 3 members of her entourage, concerned at her disappearance from the makeshift dressing room for more than 15 minutes, tiptoed through a poorly lit corridor after the sounds of a struggle. To ensure Lady Murtar's perfection for the evening photo shoot, they had been dressing her and teasing out her long curls in a sparsely furnished office on the ground floor. While the models were only human, they too caught a whiff of what had snatched Lady Murtar's attention on her way back from the toilets. Something like the smell of old parchment and animal sweat. White walls interspersed with heavily framed paintings, hummed with a small trickle of green light every 10 paces. The full lighting wasn't on, only these safety lights, whether to save on energy bills before the big opening or as an oversight. After all, it had been a last-minute arrangement, with staff allowing Lady Murtar into the side entrance of the museum so she could prepare. Staying in hotels was always difficult, with those sidelong glances from other guests, as if she were some kind of monster. Nimble even in their high heels, the 3 models tiptoed close to the walls wherever they could, taking turns to check and then dart around the display cabinets that stuck out. Something about these corridors, not even the arrangement of Victorian teddy bears behind the glass, could soften the dread that crept through their veins. The door to the Victorian Room of Rooms was ajar. From the door label, it was a drawing room, a library, a bedroom and a kitchen, each corner of the area a different aspect of a wealthy Victorian life. With a glance at each other, the 3 friends nudged open the door, just as a shriek bounced off the walls. A large hardback book was splayed open on the polished floor, a crescent-shaped chunk torn out of its thick pages. Squirming on the floor in front of them, on its back, as if grappling with an invisible force, was a small creature with see-through skin, its fangs bared and snarling. The trio gasped, their heels tapping against the floor as they hopped back in agitation and disgust. The thing's heart, its veins, its stomach were all visible, squeezing and pulsing beneath the cage of its bones. Even the torn-off mouthful of the book could be seen, a ragged lump pushing out the side of its pink stomach. It was a shadow thing, so named because it couldn't be touched. The creature itself, its body, was intangible. The only way you could touch it, attack it, was to grab its shadow. Lady Myrta had the shadow of it by its neck, planted hard against the floor. A matter of inches away from the asphyxiated shadow, its real body, untouchable, writhed on the floor at the model's feet, bucking with pain. They cried out. At the white flash of a camera, the giantess froze, her eyes wide, her fist raised. A second flash, and the thing's shadow slipped from her grip. Its body scampered close behind, only to disappear under a Victorian four-poster bed at the far end of the room. "You fool! I nearly had it then!" Lady Myrta boomed at the intruder, her dressing gown ripped where the shadow thing had clawed at her. But her attendants were quick. Two of them darted for the photographer, snatching her camera, wrestling her aside, while the third one, the gentlest of the ladies' train, hurried forward to reassure their dear giantess, hushing her softly. "You nearly had it," he repeated back to her, stroking the lady's dishevelled hair. Shoulders slumped, Lady Myrta puffed out her anger and adrenaline, shaking her head against the urge to leap at the journalist. But anxiety began to wrinkle around her eyes at the skirt-suited person struggling against her entourage's efforts. The journalist had seen. Did it matter that her assistants were busy deleting the photos? The woman across the floor from her stopped struggling and let herself be held, staring back at the giantess with eyes that could puncture the soul. She knew. She could start rumours. Well, so could they. This is weird. Who is the monster here? Who's the victim? I think the Exquisite Corpse encouraged me to flip about with this idea, with fear-mongering about a victim. Lady Myrta is a kind of monster in the eyes of normal people, just because she's different, and more so for the viciousness of her attack on the shadow thing, or how it seems at first glance. Then again, she couldn't just leave the creature to nibble away at history. But will anyone believe she's a hero? Maybe if she gets in there quickly, has words with people in high places, people who care about the museum. Then what? The shadow thing is still at large, scampering around the museum, eating history. I have no idea where that intangible body thing came from. Maybe I just had to do something unusual with the shadowy part. But that is my take on why the long-legged train fearmongered about the shadowy victim, who's perhaps not such a victim after all. I wonder whether you might be inspired to write a short fiction based on any of the prompts in today's show, whether that's about a crumpled vestibule, a luminescent barnacle, a trap door, or a shadowy victim. Although, unfortunately, if you send me ideas on any of the prompts from today, I can't include them in the next show because I'm going away for a couple of weeks and I'm recording 2 shows, one straight after the other. So there wouldn't be time for me to gather your ideas and quote them. But do get in touch anyway. I always love to hear from you. And if you have any feedback on the slightly different format I've been testing out today, let me know what you think at annatizard.com. Did I end up writing a slightly longer part of a story this time? Possibly. I think this show will still be well over half an hour after all, but hey. Next time, in the introduction, I'm going to be talking about a book I absolutely love that has monstrous themes. Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children by Ransom Riggs. Didn't like the movie, love the book. In fact, the whole series, which I have guzzled several times and keep going back for more. I have to ask, why? What is it that I love so much? This is exactly the kind of thing we as authors should really think about to try and hone in on the themes, styles, and tropes of stories that we absolutely lap up, and to consider how we can embrace those aspects in our own unique writing style to put out into the world. And of course, this feeds into my weird creature theme, because there are some seriously weird creatures in the Peculiar Children series, but a whole lot more than that is going on that makes it stand out from other stories in ways that I'd really like to plug into with my own approach to fiction, if I can. Until next time, go forth and be inspired. I hope you enjoyed today's Brainstoryum. You can find out more about Exquisite Corpse and my series, The Book of Exquisite Corpse, at annatizard.com. Subscribe to my e-newsletter and you'll get Volume 1 for free. And while you're there, why not submit a few words to the Socks of Destiny on my play page? You may inspire me or inspire yourself to write a unique new story. See you next time.